The first story begins with a young couple who decided to explore an abandoned church on the outskirts of town. As they entered the decaying building, they were immediately overcome with a sense of unease. The air was thick with dust, and the only sound was the creaking of the old wooden pews. As they made their way to the altar, they noticed a strange symbol etched into the stone floor. It was a pentagram surrounded by cryptic runes. Suddenly, they heard a low growling coming from the shadows. They turned to see a pair of glowing red eyes staring back at them. Terrified, they ran from the church, never looking back. The second story takes place in a small town where a series of gruesome murders have been linked to the local church. The townspeople whisper of a dark presence that haunts the building, claiming the lives of those who dare to enter. One night, a group of teenagers decided to investigate the rumors for themselves. As they entered the church, they were greeted by a chilling silence. The air was cold and musty, and the only light came from flickering candles scattered around the altar. Suddenly, they heard a blood-curdling scream coming from the basement. They descended the stairs, only to find a room filled with decaying corpses. The walls were covered in strange symbols, and the smell of death hung heavy in the air. They fled the church, vowing never to return. In the third story, a young priest is tormented by visions of a demonic entity that haunts the church where he serves. Every night, he is plagued by nightmares of the creature whispering dark secrets in his ear. As the days pass, he becomes more and more convinced that the entity is real and that it is coming for him. One night, as he kneels in prayer at the altar, he feels a cold hand on his shoulder. He turns to see the creature standing before him, its eyes burning with malice. With a scream, he flees the church, knowing that he will never be free from the entity's grasp. The fourth story tells of a group of paranormal investigators who are called to a church that is said to be haunted by the spirits of those who died within its walls. As they set up their equipment, they feel a chill in the air and hear faint whispers echoing through the empty halls. Suddenly, the temperature drops drastically, and they see their breath forming in front of them. They hear footsteps approaching and turn to see the ghostly figures of the church's former parishioners standing before them. Terrified, they flee the building, knowing that they have encountered something truly otherworldly. In the fifth story, a woman visits a church to light a candle in memory of her deceased husband. As she kneels before the altar, she feels a presence watching her from the shadows. She turns to see a figure cloaked in darkness, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Terrified, she tries to run, but finds herself unable to move. The figure approaches her, its hand reaching out to touch her face. With a scream, she breaks free from its grasp and flees the church, knowing that she has narrowly escaped a fate worse than death. The sixth story follows a group of friends who decide to spend the night in a haunted church as part of a dare. As they settle in for the night, they hear strange noises coming from the walls and feel a sense of dread creeping over them. Suddenly, the candles flicker out and they are plunged into darkness. They hear whispers all around them, telling them to leave before it's too late. As they try to find their way out, they feel a cold hand on their shoulders and turn to see the ghostly figure of a priest standing before them. With a scream, they run from the church, knowing that they have encountered something truly evil. In the seventh story, a man is drawn to a church by a mysterious force that compels him to enter its hallowed halls. As he steps inside, he feels a sense of peace wash over him, but it is quickly replaced by a feeling of unease. The air is heavy with the scent of incense, and the only sound is the faint rustling of robes. Suddenly, he hears a voice calling his name from the shadows. He turns to see a figure cloaked in darkness, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Terrified, he tries to run, but finds himself rooted to the spot. The figure approaches him, its hand reaching out to touch his face. With a scream, he breaks free from its grasp and flees the church, knowing that he has narrowly escaped a fate worse than death. The eighth story follows a group of teenagers who break into a church late at night to play a game of hide-and-seek. As they scatter through the building, they hear strange noises coming from the shadows. The air is thick with the scent of decay, and the only light comes from flickering candles. Suddenly, they hear a blood-curdling scream coming from the basement. They descend the stairs, only to find a room filled with decaying corpses. The walls are covered in strange symbols, and the smell of death hangs heavy in the air. Terrified, they run from the church, vowing never to return. In the ninth story, a woman visits a church to pray for her sick child. As she kneels before the altar, she feels a sense of peace wash over her. Suddenly, she hears a voice whispering in her ear, telling her that her child will never recover. Terrified, she looks up to see a figure cloaked in darkness, its eyes glowing with malice. With a scream, she flees the church, knowing that she has encountered something truly evil. The final story tells of a priest who is tormented by visions of a demonic entity that haunts the church where he serves. Every night, he is plagued by nightmares of the creature whispering dark secrets in his ear. As the days pass, he becomes more and more convinced that the entity is real and that it is coming for him. One night, as he kneels in prayer at the altar, he feels a cold hand on his shoulder. He turns to see the creature standing before him, its eyes burning with malice. With a scream, he flees the church, knowing that he will never be free from the entity's grasp. These 10 creepy church horror stories are sure to give you nightmares. Whether it's the presence of a demonic entity, the haunting of ghostly figures, or the feeling of unease that permeates the air, these tales will chill you to the bone. So the next time you pass by an abandoned church, remember these stories and think twice before entering its hallowed halls.